So the reason that I am appealing to people on YouTube, people on Instagram, um, people in my business network, people in my school network, anybody for help is I've just tried everything I can think of. I want to stop being the victim of crimes. Even if it helps build an important case, I have my limits and I can't endure this anymore. So in May 2022, that was half a year after I had made my first IRS whistleblower complaint, that in addition to my former husband Peter Matt's tax and money laundering, robustly documented tax and money laundering crimes, as well as his lawyer's conspiracy, specifically in money laundering, as well as fears of judicial corruption. So those were all included in the whistleblower complaint. So I was expecting a call or a visit from federal investigators any day for months, but nobody was getting back to me. And I'm not somebody who's just going to sit around and wait. I like to have a plan or something that I'm trying to try to improve the situation. So I thought, well, I'll file my own federal civil rights suit. I had tried talking to civil rights lawyers who just laughed at me. So nobody wanted to help me and nobody cared, and the feds weren't getting back to me. So I started researching how to file a civil rights suit, and I pretty quickly learned that it was a color of law suit. My strategy was to get out of the Circuit Court of Cook County, and I figured even if I couldn't, I had no idea how I would even approach discovery or deposing somebody, but I was going to try. I mean, what else did I have to do? But even if I couldn't actually prosecute a trial, not being a lawyer, I thought I can at least get a judge to see what's going on, and he might be a judge who's not an insider in the circuit court. And all I need is for him to issue a temporary injunction, because if I'm temporarily assigned to Lake County instead of Cook County, then I'm assigned there forever, because you can't move to get a case back, because why would a court want to have one citizen or another? They're supposed to be neutral. That's the whole point. And I genuinely believed I wouldn't even need an injunction to finally be removed from the judge and guardian ad litem, because I was naming them in a lawsuit. I was just certain, because the Code of Judicial Conduct's really clear that you're not supposed to, it needs to be written down, but that you're not supposed to be a judge against somebody who is if you're a party in a lawsuit involving that person. So I thought he would be ordered by the circuit court. They would, even if they thought I was a crazy ninny, I thought they would say, well, you have to recuse yourself. I thought if I could just stay alive for a week, everyone would be a party in a lawsuit and they would go away and I'd be free. And that didn't happen. I received an email from my ex-husband's law firm with a motion to temporarily modify the parenting plan. And I had known it was leading up to this for years. That was 5 years after our divorce, and he'd been trying to undo the divorce ever since the ink dried on the contract. So I knew it was coming, but I was just so terrified and upset. And at that point, I'd been to the FBI 2 times. I'd seen that no appellate court or circuit court judge was going to help me, not in Chicago. So it was really my only hope was the FBI would at least stop more crimes, if not punish people. I never really cared about punishing people. And it's what I still want. I just want to stop. I want my freedom back. I just scoured online and I found an email for an assistant federal attorney from the Northern District. So I copied him on an email to the judge in my case. And I used the same format. At that time, the federal prosecutor for the Northern District was John Lausch. So I used the same format to guess an email for John Lausch and copied him on the email to the judge. So you have to understand, this is kind of what's funny. At this time, I was utterly clueless that a racketeering sting was already in place. So the kind of lead up to this motion in April had happened in February. And I got my IRS whistleblower numbers in January, just saying. But then in February, this really weird letter from Dr. Bleckman, who has an attorney and hasn't been seen from much lately. But this unsigned letter attributed to Dr. Bleckman, it came to be called a preliminary custody evaluation, which is, it doesn't exist under Illinois law. So it was a letter. And the contents of the letter, Dr. Bleckman, who's a psychiatrist, was he a psychologist and a court-ordered custody evaluator, he had copied, or whoever sent the letter, it wasn't signed by Dr. Bleckman, he had copied the text from an email from Peter Matt, and the email, I'll post it up, but just to summarize, he was saying that he was worried about my mental health because at the motion to substitute Judge Johnson, which I lost in a ruling by Judge Matthew Link. If you're interested in judicial corruption, just Google him. And so Judge Link had found that Judge Johnson did not demonstrate bias by keeping a secret ex parte email thread, which contained the email from Dr. John Palin asking for a bribe. And I had also brought another instance of bias when I said, argued to Judge Link that because my old attorney, Brad Trowbridge, had defrauded me over the course of 4 months, so that was between April 2020 and July 2020, and Judge Link had said, well, why does, now Judge Trowbridge, he was a lawyer then, but why does Bradley Trowbridge's fraud mean that the judge was biased? And the quote from Peter that was in the custody evaluation, quoting me, was that I said, it matters because Judge Robert Johnson and Christopher Werman and Michael Bender all observed Bradley Trowbridge defrauding me over the course of 4 months and did nothing to intervene. So I had received this custody report, and I was like Georgie Porgy with my thumb in the pie. I was like, oh my goodness. It's a custody report, but it seems to contain my testimony. I was testifying, and it's almost as if the testimony is being tied to me being punished. And I thought I was a genius for noticing that. So I now understand, like, that's how a racketeering sting works. You put these really obvious things out there, and I didn't get it. And I guess that's the whole point, is I'm not in cahoots, and yet I'm stumbling into being in cahoots. So I had just seen this custody report, which I knew was just insane. I don't think you have to like have studied what hearsay is in law school to just know that, you know, a psychologist quoting an email from a father quoting a woman testifying at a trial is probably not allowable evidence in determining parenting rights. So in April, there was this motion to take away my parenting rights, and the only evidence was this letter from Bleckman. So I wrote these federal prosecutors. I was like, it's really fun. It is funny when you think about it. So obviously the point of it was partly to just bluff Judge Johnson, because what else do I have? But in addition, I was really hoping a federal prosecutor would finally wake up. I communicated, I think I wrote in an email to the Northern District prosecutors that I really feared for my children and me. I needed somebody to protect us. And I also wrote to the judge that I was fearful that once my ex-husband knew that I had reported his crimes, that he would hurt me or the children. But what I meant was I wanted them to quickly arrest Peter and keep the boys with me so I could make sure that, but that's not what happened. So it was, within a week that first I saw that there were cars parked getting tickets, and I realized that they were parked in a way that there were always cameras on my doors. And then I never went to a yoga class without being surrounded by people with Apple Watches. I don't go on the road without being surrounded by a motorcade. So here's a big thing. It's something that I don't understand. Nobody I know understands. I'm certain that any snide lawyer who has lasted this long is debating is, I've never heard of someone being in federal witness protection without being informed about it. It doesn't make any, well, in my case, it does make sense, but it's something that I don't believe happens. I just know it's happening because it happens to me. And then my nightmare came true in September of 2022, and Judge Johnson issued an order revoking my parental rights in a handwritten bench order, and he wrote the word temporary, or somebody wrote the word temporary in blue ink. Later he issued a restraining order, so I can't talk to them at all. So then in the fall, when I lost my children, I was certain I was under federal witness protection. One of the things that I had also told myself early on, I was like, well, it's really, really expensive to have all those cars, all those people, aircraft. I just thought, it seems to me a massive amount of money is being spent. And I certainly know that, maybe I'll be surprised, but I don't think my ex-husband has enough to make a significant case for the IRS. So that doesn't justify a lot of expense. So at first I thought, well, this can only happen for a month because it's so expensive. And then I was like, well, it can only happen for 3 months because it's so expensive. And now it's a year and a half. But then what I realized was I don't understand how it's happening, but there must be some federal prosecutor and some federal judge who thinks the surveillance of me is okay. And I don't think it's okay. So when I read the Federal Witness Security or the Witness Protection Act, whatever it's called, I noticed two things. First was that somebody can leave the program. They have to give consent. So I thought, well, great. I just will let them know I want to leave. And the other one was that you have to do a psychological assessment to see if the person is able to withstand it. And I thought, well, nobody did a psychological assessment of me, but if they did a psychological assessment, what would they be looking for? I would guess they'd be checking to see if the witness protection program would be a danger to me or make me a danger to others. So I just decided to write a letter to Chief Judge Rebecca Paulmeyer, who's I think they're called Chief Judge of the Northern District of Illinois. And basically I was just trying to explain that I didn't want to be under federal surveillance, and that I thought the federal surveillance might make me a danger to myself or others. And the goal was to get it to stop. But it didn't stop. So I was rewatching The Wire at this time, and there's this episode where Cheese, who's played by Method Man, he has a dog, and it's not very nice. He's like dog fighting. But he shoots the dog, and the police are listening on the wire when Cheese is talking about how he killed dog. And it blows up the wire because they call him in to investigate him. And then Cheese knows that he's on a wire. And then Cheese stopped committing obvious crimes because Cheese is smart. So I thought, how about I blow up the wire? So I told the court. I don't remember what I said in court, but then I wrote a talking parents message, which is an audited communication software to my ex-husband. And I said that I was serious about what I said in court, that he is under an FBI investigation. And I just I explained to him that the reason he wasn't arrested is because he is a low-level criminal, and that in cases like this, they want to get more important people. And I asked him to please get a federal criminal defense attorney. My reasoning was that if a federal criminal defense attorney looked at what Peter's attorney was filing, and looked at the information, if Peter explained his tax crimes, then that defense attorney would advise Peter to stop committing more crimes against me. But that didn't happen. I guess Peter didn't believe me. And I never got a response from Chief Judge Pallmeyer. And then, in a really horrible but ironic turn, the only evidence that's ever been submitted to revoke my parenting rights is either evidence where I'm saying, here is evidence of federal racketeering crimes I've documented and witnessed, and these are the judge, court appointee, you name it, who did which. So there's been that, my federal testimony, or my statements about being in federal witness protection. I think even if you're married to anyone, you should be able to come up with something. But the only thing that's ever been submitted by Peter's attorney, who is cooperating, is evidence about my status as a federal witness. The funny thing is, like, I think it's just because people just don't believe women. I really think that's what it is. Because literally every federal racketeering investigation involved secret surveillance, flipping people, trying to beat an entrapment defense. And it is true that in the past, women in this country have been put under federal custody and surveillance without their consent.